This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. In today's session, sorry. Okay. So yesterday we had the demo session, right? So in as part of demo session, we discussed about few important concepts like what is performance testing, the LoadRunner architecture, how do you record a simple flow using Vugen, and how do you replay. And then we discussed about the course content, and then we had some Q&A sessions. So now in today's session, we are going to discuss about uh, the types of performance testing. Okay, I do have slides for this, but I prefer to use a notepad for today. Probably I can share these slides later on if required. Okay, so now according to the topic that we discussed yesterday, right? So the definition of performance testing in general terms, like it was like checking the uh, performance of an application, okay? um, Checking the performance of an application by applying some load, okay, or expected load, whatever it is. So this is the definition of the performance testing in general, a normal definition kind of thing, not specific to any textbook or something like that. Now performance testing basically is measured in terms of speed, stability, and scalability. Performance testing is measured in terms of speed, stability, and scalability. So these three are important terms that we have to remember. What is speed? What is stability? What is scalability? So basically, speed indicates like how fast the application is responding, how fast the pages are loading. Okay, and stability means like how the application is able to withstand the load for longer duration. Like for example, if I run the load test for 5 hours, 3 hours, or 8 hours, or one day, like how the application is responding. So to check the stability of an application, okay, we run some type of test, something called endurance test, which I'll explain in some time. And then we have scalability. Like these three terms I will relate to different types of performance testing now. Okay, so first I'll list down the types of performance testing that we do. First is load testing. Second, we do stress testing. Third, endurance, or you can also call it as soak, or you can also call it as duration testing. Then you have scalability testing. Then you have a volume test. Then you have a failover test. Then you have something like spike testing also you can do it. Okay. Then there is something called smoke test. I'll tell you later what is smoke test. But for now, let's begin with what is load testing. So load testing is all about checking the speed of an application. Okay. So for example, checking the speed of an application by applying expected load. Okay. So what do you mean by speed? Speed means like how fast the application is responding. Like you click a link, how fast the application is navigating to next page, or how fast the next page is getting loaded. Okay, so it's all about how responsive, how fast is the application responding. Okay, so the by applying some load means here, like you can call it as number of users for now. You can say number of users. Load means some number of users. So If you want to check the speed of an application by applying some load, okay, that is called load test. Okay, so generally load means number of users, and it will be, for example, let's say 500 users, for example 500 users, given by given by client or a product owner or BA. Anyone can give these details to us. So this number, who will give to us? Like either client can give to us, or product owner can give it to us, or BA can give, or basically our application team can also give that number to us. Okay, so this is the first major type of test that we do. This is the first major type of test that we do. Okay, so when I say first major test, so that means we are actually doing a performance, the load testing of an application. The first major test we are running with some expected load, let's say for example 500 users, and this test we run for 1 hour, 1 hour steady state. So I'll tell you what is steady state later, but just for now, just understand that this test will run for 1 hour. Okay, this test will run for 1 hour. Now, what is that we verify as part of this test? So when you run a load test for 1 hour, when you run a load test for 1 hour, what do you verify? What do you verify? So you verify, you verify the response times. Okay, response times means like when a user clicks a button, from then onwards, like when the request goes to server, and then when you get the response back and you see the page getting loaded. So the whole cycle, like from the time the request went to server, and the server processing it and then sending you the response back. So how much time it has taken, that is called response time. I'll tell you what is a server and all those things tomorrow. Okay, so basically we verify response times. That means how quick is the application, like when you click a link or when you click a button, how fast it is responding, we verify, right? So we verify response times. Yesterday I showed you, right, like in the report, in the summary report, I clearly mentioned, like, no, these sort of response times. Okay, so we verify those response times. We verify for any errors. We verify for some performance bottlenecks. Performance bottlenecks means performance issues, like any memory related issues, or response time related issues, or SQL query related issues, or something like that. We use something called APM tools like AppDynamics or Dynatrace to verify, to identify the bottlenecks in. Okay, so to analyze in detail and find out the bottlenecks. So we can use APM tools there, application monitoring tools. Okay, so all in all, a load test is nothing but a test that we conduct to verify or to check the speed of an application by applying some load. Okay, load means number of users. Who is giving you that number? The client or product owner or business analyst or application team will be giving that number to you. Basically, this is the first major test that we do. Okay, so even before running all of these, we run this test. And if this test is failure, then there is no point in running these tests. So this test has to be successful. Okay, if you want to run these other tests. Okay, so that's the reason I told you, like, this is the first major type of test that we do, and if it is successful, then only we'll go ahead and run other types of tests. Okay, now how do you conclude, like, whether the test is a success or whether the test is a failure? It depends on many factors, but I'll write here. We'll discuss in detail later. um, how do you conclude test is pass or fail? It depends on various factors, like I said, like number of failed transactions. Okay, So ideally, the failed transaction should be less than 2%. Okay, and the response time should be response times. Okay, so response time uh, should be less than SLA. See, SLA means service level agreement, guys. Okay, SLA stands for service level agreement. So what do you mean by this SLA? For example, uh, client will have an agreement with the application team that the or the development team, or in fact the whole different teams working on that application. The agreement will be something like, whenever a user clicks a link or clicks a button, the next page should be loaded in 2 seconds or 3 seconds, something like that. So based on the SLA given by the client, so who will give you the SLA number? Again, either client or product owner or BA, like they will tell you. Okay, what is the SLA? It could be like 2 seconds or 3 seconds. Now, whatever the response times you are getting, right, those that should be less than the SLA. Okay, based on that, you can decide whether it's a pass or fail, something like that. So number of failed transactions, response times. Okay, um, these are the main factors to be considered if you want to decide a particular test as a pass or fail. There are one or two more points we can discuss later on. Okay, did you guys understand like what is a load test all about? What exactly we do as part of load test? Now we will do this practically also later on in our upcoming sessions, but it's very important to understand like what are the different types of tests that we have as part of performance testing. Okay, so load testing is all about checking the speed of an application. So load means number of users, for example 500. Um, so here users will be given by client or product owner. This is the first major type of test that we do. We run for 1 hour steady state. We verify response times, errors, some performance bottlenecks. How do you conclude if a test is a pass or fail? Based on some parameters like this. Okay. So any questions as of now? Did you guys understand like what is load testing all about? Right. So if you don't have any questions, let's move on to the stress testing. So stress testing is nothing but, I mean, the name itself is saying, right? It is self-explanatory. What it says is you are stressing the application beyond its capacity or something like that, or beyond some value. So you can write something like this: uh, checking the performance of an application with more number of users than load test. For example, in load test, we used 500 users, right? Then in stress testing, it can be anything. It can be anything beyond 500. It can be anything beyond 500, like 600, 700, 800, 900, 1000, 1100, 1200, like that. Okay. Now, like with how many users you have to test as part of stress testing. So again, it depends on the requirement. Sometimes client will say, go and test to such an extent that the application should crash. Okay. So that means client might say that test test the application or keep on increasing the users until the application breaks, something like that. Okay, so there might be a situation where there might be a scenario where uh, we are asked to uh, test the or we are asked to increase the users, asked to increase the users. There might be a scenario where we are asked to increase the users until increase users until the application crashes. Okay. So for example, I'll give you one example. Let's say there is a restaurant. In the restaurant, there is one table. Sorry, there not one table. There are five tables. In a restaurant, there are five tables, and there is one. Obviously, there is one owner, and then there is one helper. So the helper, what the helper does is like the helper will go and take order from all the five tables, and he will get the food delivered, on those tables, like let's say in 20 minutes for those five tables. Now, due to increase in demand, the owner decided to increase the number of tables from 5 to 7. Now, the helper now is accepting the orders from 7 tables instead of 5 and delivering the food, you know, for all 7 tables now. So, again, assume that the demand still increased. Okay, the demand still increased. One second, guys. Okay, so assume that the demand still increased. Now the owner decided to increase the number of tables from 7 to 9. Okay, so okay, now the helper who was handling 7 tables, now the helper should handle 9 tables. See, the helper was okay to accept the orders from 9 tables and deliver the food, but the amount of time taken to deliver the food was like actually 40 minutes now. Earlier it was like 20 minutes for 5 and 7 tables. Now, because the number of tables increased, the amount of time taken to deliver the food for all the 9 tables could be increased, like let's say 40 minutes. Now, again, the demand increased. Then the owner decided to increase the number of tables from 9 to 11. Then suddenly the helper said, no, no, I cannot do anything. It's done. I cannot handle 11 tables. So I'm leaving for the day. Like that, it will be done. So that means max number of tables the helper could assist is only 9, and with that too with some performance degradation. When I say performance degradation, earlier the helper was able to deliver the food in 20 minutes. Now it was like 40 minutes or 30 minutes, like that. There is some time delay, right? There is some performance degradation. So that means in with respect to software application also, any application, if you keep on increasing the users or if you keep on increasing the load, then at some point the application will say, hey, it's enough, you are loading the number of users, too many users you are loading, right? I'm not able to process it and respond. That's it, the application will crash. So the max number of users it can support is what you have to tell to client sometimes, but this is very rare. But generally it happens like the client might ask you like, can you test like with how many max users it can support? So in that case you have to keep on increasing. Like first you have to run with, let's say, 500, then you have to run with 700, then you have to run with 1000, then you have to run with 1500, 1200, 1500, like that. You should check and then you see like how it is supporting. Okay, now this also will be run for steady state, 1 hour steady state you can run. Okay, obviously you'll verify response times, errors, some performance bottlenecks, and then these are same things. Okay, so did you guys understand what is stress testing? You are stressing the application beyond its normal capacity, beyond its normal capacity, right? Hope you understood. Okay, then the third type of test, if you don't have any questions, let me check. If someone is pinging in the chat window, right, just remind me that you have a question in chat window. Sometimes no, I might miss chat window. So then third one is like endurance and or soak or duration testing. This one. So this endurance or soak or duration testing is related to the term stability that we have used here. Okay. So how stable is your application when you run a test for longer duration? So it means checking the stability of an application by running the test for longer duration. For example, like 3 hours, like 5 hours, 8 hours, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, like and so on, like that. Okay. So my like some very rarely, very rarely they might run for 5 days also sometimes. I have never done that, but just telling you. The max we run is like 8 hours. Okay. So the name is like endurance or soak or duration. Even anything is same. In some projects they call endurance, in some projects they call soak, in some projects they call duration. So it's all about checking the stability of an application by running the test for longer duration. Okay. So why? So how? What exactly we monitor here? See, when I'm running a test for 5 hours, let's say, okay, how the response times are coming in the first 1 hour, how the response times are coming in the second 1 hour, how the response times are coming in the third 1 hour. Like generally, what it says is like the way the application is responding in the first 1 hour, it should behave in a similar way throughout the test. For example, in the first 1 hour I got response times like very quick, like 0.5 seconds or 1 second. But let's say in the last 1 hour of endurance test, I got response times like 4 seconds, 5 seconds, which is quite abnormal. All right, it should not be like that. That means there is something wrong that is happening. The application is not stable, right? So so you have to find out like what is the reason for instability. Okay, if there is any deviation with respect to the response times for every hour that you run, okay, then you have to find out the reason. Okay, so generally, again I said this is run for like 3 hours, 5 hours and all. Obviously we verify response times. Okay, and here we also verify something called memory leaks. Of course we verify everywhere, but the chances of getting memory leak issue is very high in this particular type of test. Okay, I will discuss what is memory leaks and all later, but there is something called a memory leak issue which might occur, especially with the endurance or load testing. Okay, and um, you might get a question like, with how many users we will run this test then? So what is the number of users that we use here as part of this test? The number of users that we use as part of this test is like, in some projects we go with same volume as load test. We go with same volume as load test. So for example, in above load test, um, okay, in above load test statement, we used 500, right? So here also we use 500, like this. Okay, in some projects what they do, in some other projects, um, they take 75% of the load of 75% of the users from the load test. For example, in load test, if they used 500 users, or if they tested with 500 users, then here 75% of 500, that is 375, will be for soak test. So like this, they will use it. See, but I personally prefer to use this particular thing. I want to go with the same volume, whatever we used as part of load test. I want to go with the same number. But sometimes some projects they use only 75% of the load. But I personally always go with this particular number. Okay. See, generally, if you are assigned to a project and if the project already has some set of tests that are already run, run, you follow whatever they follow. Okay, and if you are in a position to take a decision, uh, right, then you go with this value, the same number as load test. Okay, so very important type of test, because most of the performance issues come obviously can be found out here, especially with issues like memory leaks, high CPU utilization. Okay, so something like that. So any questions as of now? So you understood what is the difference between load test and endurance test? What is the main difference, guys? This we run for longer duration like this. Why? To check the stability. Is the application stable enough to handle the load for longer duration? That's what we check. Then if you don't have any questions, let's move on to the next type of test, that is scalability test. So again, as the name suggests, right, here it is referring to term scalability. So it's all about, it's like checking how scalable how scalable is the application. Okay, so here we run the so we run the scalability test considering the future growth, for example, if client says client says my business client says my business will increase by 50% in next 6 months. So that means now itself you have to test with 50% more load. If you for example, load test is done with 500 users, and client is saying that, okay, and client client said business will increase by 50% in the next 6 months. That means now itself now itself we have to run with 750 users. We have to run with 150% of the load, that is 750 users. What is 50% of 500? 250, right? So 50 plus 500, sorry, 250 plus 500, that means 750 users. So because client said the business might increase by 50% in next 6 months. Okay, so business might increase by 50%. No, like this we'll do. So for example, see, I'll tell you one practical example. See, I was working for one of the bank, uh, I think in 2020. Uh, so in 2020, we all know that we all know that the pandemic started, right? I think in the month of March, something like that, March second week or first week. It was more aggressive at that point of time. So I think in the month of May, the client scheduled one meeting and said, "Hey, uh, due to the pandemic, the number of people uh, accessing the banking applications are increasing day by day, because due to pandemic no one was going to bank directly, right? Most of them try to access it online, and do the task online. So the client said, because of pandemic the number of users are increasing day by day, and we assume that in the next 3 months, okay, the number of users might increase up to 400%. The number of users might increase up to 400%. And the client said, check how scalable are our applications, okay, with 400% load. So how are you going to test that? Can anyone tell, like, so let's say let's say we already done 100% load test. That means load test in sense 100% load test with 500 users. Now, can anyone tell what, according to the client input, whatever the client told, can anyone tell what we have to do now? According to the information that I provided, what we have to do now? Because client said, due to pandemic, the number of people accessing the online application is increasing day by day, and the users might go up to 400% in next three months. So can anyone analyze the statement and tell me what I have to do now? Just just understand the statement and tell me what I have to do now. Generally, what I have to do. No, anyone? I'm giving a statement, right? So client said in the next 3 months, the number of users accessing the application might go up to 400%.
So we need to increase the load up to 2000.
Okay, so do you mean to say I have to run a load test with 2000 users? I have to run a test with 2000 users?
No, we can increase slowly.
Yeah. So the good point. So the thing is, when client says the number of users might go up to 400% in next 3 months. Now, if you go ahead and run, if you go ahead and do test with 500 into 4, that is 2000 users, 2000 users. Now, this approach is wrong. Can anyone tell why this approach is wrong? Any guess why this approach is wrong?
Are you saying because it is going to be in 3 months, it will be increasing linear or maybe exponential something?
Uh, so the reason is like if you run with 2000 users, what if the application crashes? What if the application crashes
Yes.
at let's say 1000 users or 1500 users? Will you be able to tell client where exactly it crashed? You will not be able to tell, right? So that's the reason what we have to do is we have to gradually increase. Like then we have to run with 200% load with 1000 users. This is successful, then run 300% load test with 1500 users. If this is also successful, then run 400% with 2000 users. Now, to with respect to our applications, whatever we tested, some of the applications were able to withstand 400% load. Some of the applications were not able to handle 300% only. So that means the application crashed at like with 1500 users, sorry, with 1500 with 1500 users, the application crashed for some of the applications. For some of the applications, it succeeded with 2000 users. For some of the application, it failed with 1500 users itself. So now for the applications which succeeded 2000 users, that's fine, no issues. For the applications which failed at 300% load, that is, which failed with, for example, 1500 users, what is the immediate solution? Can anyone tell? What is the immediate solution? You don't have time due to pandemic. The immediate solution will be increase the infrastructure. Okay, like in terms of RAM, memory, CPU, and all those stuff. Okay, of course, you can do some fine tuning, performance tuning of code or whatever it is, but because we don't have much time due to pandemic, so the immediate solution would be um, like either scale up or scale out. That means either you add a number of either you add additional servers or you increase the capacity of the servers. That's what we have to do. So tomorrow I'll tell you like what is scale up, what is scale out, what is a server and all those stuff. But generally scalability test will be done like this. And this is also run for 1 hour. one hour steady state. Obviously, what we verify each and everything, whatever we verify here, we verify the same thing here as well. Okay. So any questions? And this is a kind of no. If you do stress testing, right, you need not do this. If you do this, you need not do stress testing. Both will go hand in hand. Like the like the approach might be a little bit similar, but that's what I'm telling. If you do load testing, sorry, if you do stress testing, no need to do scalability. If you do scalability, no need to do stress testing. That's the reason you don't find any projects having both stress and scalability at the same point of time. The next one is volume testing. This again, we will do it very, very rarely. Okay, this is exactly same as load test. Exactly same as load test, except that huge data will be inserted into database. Okay, that's it. Exactly same as load test. When I say exactly same as load test, so that means whatever we do here, everything will be, uh, everything will be done here as well. Remove this. Okay, now everything will be same. When everything is same, why it is called volume testing? Because it is related to data. When I say data, see, uh, for example, I have done a load test for my application. Okay, for example, I've done a load test for my application, and my application has, like, let's say 1 lakh records in the database. Obviously, what are records? What are records, or what is database? Database means it's a it's a kind of like where the data will be stored, application data will be stored. For example, if you take a college or an university, what is the database that you contain? A database contains information related to students, professors, administrative department, transport, so many things are there. The database contains information related to so many things, right? So for every application there will be database. So if you take a bank, there will be database. Why? To store customer data, to store loans data, to store credit card data, to store so many things related to bank customers, right? So similarly, for every application you have some database. Now let's say for the load test, you have 1 lakh records in the database. For the load test, you have 1 lakh records for the database. Now, with respect to volume test, what we do is, specifically we will insert huge amount of data into database. Like instead of 1 lakh, we intentionally insert like approximately 3 to 4 lakhs of data. Let's say 2 lakh or 3 lakhs amount of data into database, and then do a load test. Okay, so that means only difference between load test and volume test is the amount of data that you have in the database will be very huge. Now, who will insert that data? So data to be inserted with the help of DBA, database administrator. It could be SQL DBA, it could be Oracle DBA, like that. Data to be inserted into database with the help of DBA, right? You write some queries, right? I don't know how many of you know, but generally they write some queries, right? Insert into table name, something like that. Table name, okay, then values, so and so. So they use some queries, sorry, they use some SQL statements to insert huge amount of data into database, or they might write some procedures also. That's fine. But end of the day, you need to have a huge database, okay, huge data in the database, and then go for this with this particular load. And then remaining everything is as it is. That's the reason we call it as volume testing. The only change with this, with respect to load test and this is the data will be very huge in the database in volume testing. Otherwise, it's same. This is very, very rare. We don't do it frequently. If you ask me when did you last executed volume test, sir, I didn't execute in last 2 years. Even though I'm working on performance testing, I didn't, maybe in my projects or in the projects that I have worked, they didn't execute any volume test as such. Okay. Then this failover testing is something which we have to discuss tomorrow, because to understand this failover test, which is very very important, in the recent past, this failover test is becoming so popular. So to understand this, first we have to understand the terms called what is a server, what is application server, what is database server, what is web server. So we have to understand these terms to understand failover test. So tomorrow first we'll discuss what is a server, what is application server, what is database server, what is a web server and all, what is scale out, scale up, and then we will discuss failover test. Failover test means like if any one of the server is down, how the other server is handling, like that we have to test it. So we'll see the testing approach of failover test tomorrow. Then spike test is something like basically you have uh, in one line I will write. So basically spike test means you have an extreme uh, increase or decrease in user volumes. See, suddenly, like you are running a test, you started a test. Let's say you started a test, okay? It's running, running, running. Suddenly you added, let's say some 500 users you added like this suddenly, and then after 1 minute, suddenly you dropped everything, all the users. Then how the application is responding? So when there is a sudden or extreme increase in number of users, sudden and extreme increase or decrease in number of users, how the application is handling? See, it's like it's like you go to a gym, okay? Slowly you pick a 5 kgs dumbbell and then 7.5 kgs and then 10 kgs like that. Suddenly if you take like 50 kgs dumbbell and then you try to lift it and drop it like this, like when there is a sudden increase or decrease in terms of volumes, how the application is responding. Okay, so is there any impact on the servers? Is there any impact in the response times? Is the application crashing? So those things we have to verify as part of spike testing. Okay, so tomorrow we will see what is failover test, and I'll also explain like what is smoke test later on. But these are the major types of tests that we execute. If you are working in a project or if you're assigned to a project where the client doesn't know anything about performance testing, the client doesn't know anything about performance testing and the client asks you to take a call and run the important types of tests, then I suggest you to run load testing, load testing, endurance testing, and scalability testing, because the performance testing is measured in terms of speed, stability, and scalability, right? So speed means load test. Stability means like endurance test. Scalability means scalability test, like that. So these three you can suggest. If client is not willing to tell you like what type of tests you have to run, then you can only decide that we are going to run load test, load test, endurance test, and scalability test. Apart from this, if client wants you to run a failover test and whatever it is, you can do it depending on your requirement. I'll tell you how to run a failover test. I'll tell you tomorrow. Okay, I'll tell you the approach directly. I'll tell you the process how we run it with the help of some diagrams. Okay. So any questions as of now? So I don't want to prolong today's session with too much of information because we just started. I want you to ask questions. So either in the chat window or yes, Kiran, that's true. You have to increase the load by 4 times for that for that scalability test, but you have to slow increase gradually, not at a time. If you increase at a time, right? Let's say if it is failing here, or let's say you directly ran this test. Now and it is failing. Now your client will ask, is it handling 1,000 at least? Then what will you say? Will you be able to tell whether it is handling 1,000 users? No, right? That's the reason we have to gradually increase the users like this. Okay. So I will send this notepad. Okay. I'll send this document to you. It will definitely help you in terms of understanding it better. And I do have these slides also. I can share it. So tomorrow I'll explain this slide, but I generally we have different types of testing that we use. See here, so I can share these slides also, but thing is like see here, the same thing that we discussed today. If you see speed, performance testing is measured in terms of speed, how fast the application responds to your request. Okay. Then stability means performance should not degrade even if you are using the application for longer duration. Right. Scalability means application ability to handle increasing users without performance degradation. Okay. So just keep this notepad with you. It might help you in future. So tomorrow we'll discuss some important concepts like what is a server, what is app server, web server, database server, what is a protocol, what is failover testing, what is scale up, what is scale out. With the help of different slides, we are going to discuss tomorrow's session. Okay, so just like first 4 to 5 sessions will be theoretical, guys, and remaining everything will be practical. And don't think that the theoretical sessions are not important. It's very important. Definitely they will ask you questions from this. Without theoretical interview questions from the topics that we discuss for next 3 4 days, there won't be any interview for sure. Okay, it's that important, I can assure you that. That's the reason I added in the interview questionnaire document also. So in the interview questionnaire document, I added all the questions whatever we are discussing, some related to those, what questions might come up in the interview. So I add each and everything like this. So you'll get to know like tomorrow and day after tomorrow, like after this session, I'll again come back to this interview questionnaire document and I'll show you like what questions you might get from those particular topics. Okay. So any questions for today? Okay. I'll stop recording here. We'll catch up tomorrow. And if you have any further questions, do reach out to me on WhatsApp directly. Thank you so much.